Battle villainous foes, make courageous choices, and strike a blow against the evil that threatens the land in Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. Welcome to Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp.
And I'm Kevin Delp. Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth is a cooperative adventure campaign game for 1 to 5 players.
It's published by Fantasy Flight Games, and they sent us this copy to review. Now, Kevin has actually painted the miniatures, so what you're going to see in the video is a little more colorful than what you get in the game. It is gray plastic. And also, we've shot a lot of the video on top of a Game Toppers adventure mat.
Now, the first part of this video will be more general and spoiler-free, and then when we get to specific comments that contain spoilers, we'll let you know for the campaign that we got to play. The game is app-dependent. You'll need to load it to start your game. It will walk you through setting up the scenario you are playing.
Each player plays as a character and will choose a specific role as well. Each player's deck will have basic cards and then specific cards to their character and their role. Some of them are items that are always available.
The cards are used several ways. You can prepare some as skills you can activate to use the text like sprint, hide, strike, and other abilities. You also use your deck of cards to resolve tests during the scenario. You'll draw a number of cards equal to your skill in that attribute. You're looking for successes or leaves that you can turn into successes if you spend inspiration tokens. Throughout a round, you'll move from the hero phase where players take their actions to the shadow phase where the game takes its turn and things like the enemies might spawn or fight the heroes.
Now, the game will tell you what your objective is for the scenario, but it might be something that updates. So it's kind of like a step 1, you need to do this, and then step 2, and then step 3.
But there will be things along the way that probably will distract you, and you'll have to balance discovering things and fighting monsters with actually completing the objective. Either way, the game will tell you when you either win or lose the scenario.
There are 2 main ways to lose. One of them is running out of time on the threat track, and the other is if a hero dies because they fail a last stand. Now, either way, whether you win the scenario or lose, you are going to progress to the next scenario, and you can't really replay that same scenario again. There are 2 main types of scenarios, ones that use these battle maps and ones that use these other tiles for journey maps.
If you're familiar with Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition from Fantasy Flight Games, then you're going to be familiar with a lot of the game mechanics for this game, like working with the app, the actions the players take, and even the phases. But 2 main differences in this game is that you actually will be playing cards instead of rolling dice to resolve tests, and there's a campaign to this game. So it's not like, let's play Scenario 5. I really like Scenario 5. No, you have to play from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, and once you decide which characters you want to play with and your player count for that campaign, you're pretty much locked in. So you can't add another player to that specific campaign. And if someone decides to drop out, you're going to have to play their character as well.
One of the things that you can change, though, is the role for your character. So in one campaign, I was Bilbo, and I paired it with the burglar, and that was the suggested pairing for that game. But later in the game, I actually changed the role to the musician. I did enjoy playing as the thief and using cards like sneaking that lets you not provoke attacks when hidden. But then I played one game with the musician ability and really liked it because they help with supporting other players. So I think it was like game 9 that I had switched Bilbo from the thief to the musician. And I already had a lot of cards for Bilbo as a thief, so I got to keep those cards. But now that I was the musician, I got to gain new and different ones for the rest of the campaign.
As you gain XP, you can spend it to add new cards to your deck. Once you've gotten the cards you want from one role, it might be a good idea to switch and build up experience in another role.
Because you're customizing your deck not only with the roles but with special trinkets and title cards that you'll get, it's not easy to run more than one campaign at the same time.
Yeah, we did it once where we had 2 games going on, and the app does tell you exactly what is in your deck, so you can figure it out, but you would have to take apart your deck each time you switch groups and then reassemble it again. So we found that it's just easier to do one campaign, keep all your stuff in a bag, throw it in the box, and then it's ready for you when you get the game out again.
Now, we actually are playing 2 campaigns, but we're using 2 different games. I've enjoyed playing different characters that have different strengths and just their playstyles.
Also, the campaign itself has some variableness in it. Now, the scenarios are going to be the same main storyline, but the side quests may appear at different spots, and even the specific items that you need to find or places you need to go will change from campaign to campaign in the same scenario.
Yeah.
And there were a few where we had some surprises along the way because we thought, oh, this is the way this scenario goes, but we didn't get to something in time, and it had a completely different resolution. Now, there's also a few spots where there is a branching storyline. So at the end of a scenario, you can choose A or B, and depending on what you choose, it's going to affect your campaign. We are huge Lord of the Rings fans, and we enjoy the app-integrated game Mansions of Madness. So we were really excited about this game even before we played it.
Now, we finished the initial campaign, the first one, and overall really enjoyed it and would recommend it to you. The app works well, although there's not an undo button. The story, although it doesn't closely align to any of the Tolkien stories, there is the essence of the lore and the characters, especially in the later scenarios. And the first campaign, I really enjoy the story with all its twists and turns, and I'm really looking forward to the next one, Hunt for the Ember Crown.
I enjoy the strategic decisions of which cards to prepare for actions and which to leave on my deck for successes. We played our campaign with 4 players, and we had a lot of really good discussions about what order to take our turns in and who should take which actions, what's going to be best for their character. Now, something that could be a negative, but it didn't really bother us too much, is that you don't know the length of a scenario when you start it. You don't know how long it's going to take.
Although, the battle maps were usually a little shorter.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But those journey maps, there was a wide variety of time it could take to complete one of those. So if you're having a really tight time frame of when you need to finish your game for the evening, it might be best not to start a scenario.
At first glance, the tiles can seem a little bland, lacking character, but as you look closer, there is detail with some buildings, rivers, and lakes, and the description on the app also adds to the setting. On the battle maps, you often put tokens down to represent trees, statues, fire pits, and other objects.
I've seen some comments online about the difficulty of the game, especially at higher player counts, that it's just way too hard. We didn't really find that to be an issue, but I could see the early games especially being difficult, and there are a few reasons for that. I think one of the main reasons is because you have unupgraded characters at the beginning. They're pretty basic.
They're really basic.
You don't have a whole lot of card powers that do tons of combos, and you haven't quite figured out your character's strengths and weaknesses. So the first few scenarios, it is basically just trying to figure things out. Also, figuring out the game mechanics and the strategy. We had a little bit of a leg up playing Mansions of Madness, which has some similarities, so some of the basic rules we already knew. But there is, on the back of the rule book, a section for commonly forgotten rules that if you are making those mistakes, you're going to make the game much harder for yourself.
Overlooked rules.
So things like you get to move 2 spaces when you do the movement, and you can break that up with actions. Or how the enemies move during their phase. We even got that one wrong in the first game. We were moving them way too far, and so they were attacking us instead of them being farther away. So if you're struggling, make sure that you look at those rules again, especially the commonly overlooked ones, because you might be making it harder for yourself.
Now, we did play on normal mode in our game, but you can actually play on a more difficult mode. So, yeah, if you're struggling, try to push through because there are some really sweet upgrades for your characters. And I think that's where some of the cool decisions come in the game. Do you get upgrades that give you more success icons, or do you get cards that have really interesting abilities?
As you play, you'll get a better feel for your character. Each character role combination has different strengths. As Barivore with the Pathfinder role, I really wanted to explore tiles and move around a lot. Fighting wasn't my greatest strength. But when I played as Legolas with the Hunter role, it was better for me to spend a bunch of actions picking off enemies so other characters could explore and interact with things. So we really enjoyed the game, but we realized that not every game is for every player. So you do have to be okay with the adventure and discovery aspect of the game. You don't always know what those interaction tokens are going to lead you toward. Also, there is some randomness with the card flips for resolving tests, although I do think it's easier to plan and mitigate the card flips than just a dice roll. Also, the enemies, the way the app controls them, sometimes they can gang up on a character and it can feel a little overwhelming. And then with any game like this, there are some really big highs. You know, like, oh, we just did it! We made it! We only had one threat left and we got it! And we had that happen and it feels so good. But then there are also some of the lows where I just needed one more success. So you do have to be okay with that. A little bit of randomness. It's not something in this game that you can completely plan out and have everything go to your optimal plan.
Now, we've played about 30 different scenarios, and those are over multiple campaigns. So we really want to share some of our thoughts with you, but it's definitely going to be spoilery, so only continue watching if you're okay with that.
Spoilers!
So we like the different scenarios and how they change from campaign to campaign. And one example is the Forsaken Inn. So what you're trying to do in the scenario is find a spy. So in one campaign, we are looking at the different characters in the inn and we find the spy. So in the next campaign, in the other campaign we played and we're like, oh, we remember this one, you have to find the spy. So we didn't find the spy. It was a totally different character. And all of a sudden, the inn starts burning. And then we're like, what's happening?
What?
The inn's burning and we have to rush out of the inn. Or I think we might have to douse it out with water or anything. And we have to go and fight some more monsters. So that was a huge surprise.
Yeah, in another scenario, the second time we played it, we didn't complete one of the objectives in enough time. So we had to escape a different way. And we had no idea that that was even an option because we had done it the quicker way the first time. So that was a surprise. Also, in our 2 campaigns, in the second one, we chose a different branching path, whether to go fight the troll or to rush to the river. So it'll be interesting to see if that has some consequences on that second campaign, because we haven't quite finished that one yet.
Yeah, some of our favorite scenarios were ones that were more than just fighting enemies, like finding a plant to heal the ranger, trying to find a scepter, the spy, trying to figure out who the spy was, or locating the hidden mirror. I got a trinket that gave me a benefit for interacting with people, so I was always trying to talk to people. That led to some fun storylines, like with the kids who were randomly hanging out near a battle.
The way the objectives update, you're not always sure how close you are to ending a scenario. There were a few times where we had a lot of time left on the threat track, and I would have liked to have explored a little bit more, maybe found some more trinkets, titles, gained some more lore, but we just weren't sure how much there was left to do, so we rushed to complete the next objective on our list, and that ended up being the final thing that we needed to do, so it ended the scenario.
Yeah, I think overall the storyline works really well with Ataran being the main enemy, and throughout the campaign you're sort of fighting his minions like Golgotar. I think that all works really well, and sometimes you're like, yay, we fought and defeated an enemy in one of the scenarios, and all of a sudden he stands back up and runs away, or stands back up and keeps fighting you.
Yeah, so you have to be prepared for basically anything. I do think that there were some tricky choices, some interesting choices throughout the game. Do we align with a specific character, or do we fight against them? Do we take on the power of the race and try to control them? Or do we destroy them? There were a few points where I was sort of interested in taking one of those risky choices, but in those later scenarios, the game does tell you if you lose that scenario, it's going to end your campaign. So, yeah.
I think there was one where we actually like smashed the mirror. It was like should we smash it like you were saying earlier? I think everyone was like, we just gotta smash the mirror. It was
Don't even
mess with the race. So it's kind of funny. So depending on your choices and how well you do in the campaign, it can last between 10 to 14 scenarios, and I think that does add to the replayability of Journeys in Middle-earth. And of course, there is the enemy pack that you can add and a new downloadable campaign that just became available.
I'm really looking forward to playing the next campaign, The Hunt for the Ember Crown. I hope that it has the stuff that made the first one so appealing to me. The theme of Middle-earth, the strategic decisions and discussions, the discovery and adventure.
As you can see, we really enjoyed playing this game and can't wait for more. So if you like games with co-op play, if you like this adventure game with the Lord of the Rings theme, then check out Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth from Fantasy Flight Games, and we would love for you to subscribe to Tantrum House.
Also, when we shoot our
I sort of... And 3.
I completely lost whatever I was supposed to say. I'm sorry. I was like, Kevin is talking. I'm not sure if it's making sense, but he's talking. I enjoyed